What's up, everyone? Welcome to a very special episode of Ship Chasing and Establish the Edge. While Pete Overzet is on vacation, we've combined podcasts. I'm joined by my Establish the Edge co-host, Mike Leone of EstablishTheRun.com. Mike, how's it going?
It's going pretty well. I like the crossover episode. When I tweeted out the link, I was gonna try and find a GIF of some '90s TV show where they did a crossover, like Family Matters and some other show, but I got lazy and didn't do that.
Well, I did find a still of you that I was quite happy with.
Yeah, I asked you for the YouTube link, didn't even look at it closely, tweeted it out, and then I came into my computer about 10 minutes before the show and I was like, shit. As I saw my bloated face on Super Bowl Sunday and my Mahomes jersey sitting in the dark like a creeper.
You asked me for the link, I sent it, then you didn't comment at all. I thought, that's weird.
He must take really bad photos. It doesn't even phase him.
Yeah, I didn't seem bothered by that at all. Okay. Well, anyway, so today we're gonna talk about some of Mike's best ball research, kind of the Establish the Edge idea, right? We dive into the weeds here with some of the research that Mike has been doing on best ball stacking and a little bit on team construction. And then this is also ship chasing, so we do live drafts here. So we're gonna do a live best ball draft. We're gonna jump in one of these underdog, the big board drafts. Yeah, my dynasty rankings came out, so maybe we'll touch on that at some point. But for now, I wanted to start with this whole stacking. I know you've been in the lab. You've got an article series in the works. You wrote a lot about stacking for best ball drafts last year, and so you kind of dove in this year on updating it. What did you find?
Yeah, I thought it would be neat to be able to look at actual data and stacking, because last year was kind of theoretical. It was, looking at how players outperformed ADP and how you could use that to stack to your advantage, but it was very theoretical. It wasn't practical. And a lot of the questions I got after that article was, well, how much value should I sacrifice in order to get my stack? How many guys can I stack? So having the actual underdog data, as you said, I'm going to release this series. It was pretty neat. First thing was stacking is, as we thought, is advantageous. Your win rates are higher when you're stacking than when you're not stacking from the underdog best ball mania data. But at its base level, the problem is, Pat, everyone's stacking. So you don't have this huge edge by just saying I'm stacking, because 11 out of 12 teams in your league are stacking, at least one guy, according to the data. But as you dig deeper, some of the nuances that I thought were kind of neat was the teams that were able to come up with multiple stacks, with both of if you drafted two quarterbacks, if you were able to stack both of them, the win rate started to separate a little bit. And at receiver in particular, if you could get a couple of receivers with that second quarterback, it really helped the win rates. One thing we were talking with each other before the show, the stacks that were successful on your primary quarterback, your first quarterback drafted, didn't go as deep, which I thought was interesting, because I did try to do some onslaughts last year with Dak and the Cowboys. And I don't want to overthink that, but I think the cost...
Yeah, because that could have worked pretty well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But Dak gets hurt, and then guys like Kyler, who were QB1s and had very high win rates because they were so good, but he wasn't really a great stat guy. That's one of the issues with using just 1 year specific data is individual players can throw off the systemic data and maybe, lead you down the wrong path when it's like, oh, it's not that you shouldn't double stack your QB1. It's that Kyler's a unicorn. But I do think the cost on QB1s is high. As a result, the pass catcher cost is usually high, or that QB1 has a ton of rushing upside. And if they're hitting the ceiling, it's via rushing.
Yeah, that's what kind of jumped out to me about it too. I think the market is getting better at quarterback evaluation and really pricing in that rushing upside. Just a couple years ago, you could get Lamar Jackson in high stakes drafts in like the 12th round, and Kyler Murray as a rookie, you could get him right there in the 12th round. I don't think we're really going to see that as often. And if the quarterbacks that are going higher are more rushing focused, then it would make sense that, if they're less of their value is coming through the air, that stacking them might not be as effective. So it's kind of interesting to, if you're not stacking that quarterback quite as much, are you then trying to stack your other quarterbacks even more?
I think so. And Dustin asked in the chat, he tried with Big Ben to stack 4 to 5 pick guys with him. Was that a good strategy? And the data really does show that's a good strategy. One, it's a quarterback that's not going to get his fantasy points via rushing. So when he gets it, it's going to be through the air. And what we saw was that QB2, really 3 to 5 guys you could stack in terms of skill players with that QB2 or the QB3 and do pretty well. I think ideally you only want to draft 2 QBs. Just because that means you're getting an elite or near elite quarterback early, and those guys have separated a little bit more. That was a common trend in DFS all last year. But if you miss out on one of those early quarterbacks, you end up with 3, kind of heavier stacking your second and third definitely makes sense. I think 3 to 5 deep is fine. And there's a floor and a ceiling thing too. I think one of the reasons why stacking deep with your second quarterback makes sense is, like in best ball, you don't have to predict when guys are going to go off, right? So Big Ben has a massive week. You don't need to predict which pass catcher goes off that week. If he's going to outperform his ADP by a large margin, which you hope if you're drafting the guy, on his big weeks, the pass catchers have to do well, right? And you don't need to pick and choose which one if you've got all the bases covered. And you can extend that to if you're stacking with multiple quarterbacks. You don't need to know which stack ahead of time is going to go off. Hopefully your primary stack goes off, but if it doesn't, you have this contingency plan. So I actually think stacking in multiple ways, stacking deeper, provides a floor in addition to the ceiling. We talk a lot about the correlation leading to the ceiling, but there's a floor aspect to it too.
Yeah, and Justin talks in some of his writing on this on Establish a Run of this idea that you need to embrace fragility, and that if you take a guy, you now know that guy's going to have a good season, right? Because you got to think through this lens of you're gonna take this whole tournament down. So you've just selected, a quarterback. You now have new information that quarterback's going to have a good year. Therefore, it would make sense to try to build around that guy, even if it's a quarterback that you feel kind of gross about or didn't really want to have to take. And so if you take Daniel Jones, it probably makes sense to still go ahead and stack Daniel Jones, because Daniel Jones is going to have a good year now once you've made that selection.
Yeah, I love that thought process. I wrote about my experience with the Scott Fish Bowl last year. And when I was talking about approaching these large field tournaments, especially, you have to make some assumptions that things are going to go right. I'm big into the hyper fragile running back strategy, which I'm sure we'll talk as we do some drafts, but that where you're drafting running backs early, your assumption is, okay, my first 2 running backs are going to stay healthy the whole year and be okay. And you kind of just have to make that assumption to build the best team possible. And if it doesn't happen, you lose. That's fine. Only 1 out of 12 teams on average wins anyways. So the same thing applies to stacking. So big fan of that strategy. One thing too, I didn't put this in, you saw the draft of my series, but one thing I wanted to close out is, at the end of the day, the idea is if you draft a quarterback who the win rates with that quarterback are below average, stacking should make that worse. And the opposite would be if you have a quarterback whose win rates are above average, just overall in a vacuum, stacking should make it even higher. So I kind of want to go through the quarterbacks and see, out of the quarterbacks that really outperformed their ADP, how much of an improvement was it if you stacked those quarterbacks versus ran them solo, and vice versa. Even look at the worst ones, because while someone might say, oh, if you drafted Lamar, you did terrible, and if you drafted Lamar and Andrews, you did extra terrible, they might say, well, so you shouldn't stack. But that actually kind of proves stacking. That was you picked the wrong guy, you invested in the wrong offense, you're out anyways. So you want that correlation. The correlation is the whole point. Obviously, it's going to come with some downside, but the idea is when you hit on guys, you really hit and you maximize your potential.
Yeah, if you're taking Lamar that early, you better take the guys he's going to be throwing to, because a ton of your team capital is now tied up in the Ravens. You mentioned the hyper-fragile strategy. That strategy looked like it was pretty strong. In particular, I think we should point out that the research that you've done is on underdog drafts. These are 18 roster spot drafts. I think that really does matter you know, um, compared to, something like FFPC where you've got 28 roster spots certainly matters. But even if you have 20 roster spots, I think those extra 2 roster spots make a difference. Underdog also half point PPR. So all of those rules factor in. But in this particular format, it really looked like Hyperfragile was pretty strong strategy. That being defined roughly as you're getting all of your running backs in the first like 5 or 6 rounds, and you're only taking a max of 4 running backs.
Yeah, and I think, I'm looking at the data, I would adapt this, but the running back, just looking at running backs, not the rest of your construction, the highest league win rate was drafting 4 running backs, which is pretty much hyper fragile. You and I chat in the offseason. When I first released my article on hyper fragile, it was a little bit more extreme and then kind of backed off. And we kind of like this idea where you take 1 or 2 very early that you're kind of banking on, but maybe not 3 out of the gate, right? Like still get yourself some receiver upside, still leave yourself some room for a premium tight end, depending where you draft. Then you can take a Ronald Jones, who you really like, in round 6 or so. And because that third running back isn't as strong, you take a 4th, maybe that's a decent bet later on. And I think you could extend that to 5. The highest win rates for running back was 4 running backs, 6 running backs, 5. All the other running backs, and those were the most used, of course. But teams that went like crazy 0 RB and put a ton of running backs up, like 7 running backs, 8 running backs, those teams did not do that well. Obviously, taking 5 and 6 running backs was by far the most popular. So there's nothing crazy about that, but only taking 4 really wasn't that popular. And what was especially true, the win rate in winning your league for taking 4 running backs was 9%, of taking 6 running backs was 8.8%, of taking 5 was 8.4. Everything else was 7.4 or lower. So clearly those were the 3 best builds. But if you looked at top 1% performances for running backs, 1.7% of those teams finish in the top 1%. Like that's a huge above average. That's huge leverage. Whereas for the 5 and 6 teams, it was about 1%, it was right around average.
Okay.
So you basically get this higher end ceiling, but you're not even sacrificing like just the league win in order to do that.
One of the kind of maybe the like key point of the whole 0 running back idea is that wide receivers are going to outscore running backs throughout the draft. And so in a weird way, I think in best ball, where you don't have access to the waiver wire, you can't kind of reconfigure your team throughout the season. If you draft 0 running back, you're devoting so many of those roster spots to the position that we know is not going to score as many points, running back. And you're depriving you're putting too much into running back by going 0 running back. And instead, you're kind of flipping it by you're spending early round capital on running backs, but you're still limiting the amount of draft capital that you're putting into the running back position.
Yeah, exactly. And with wide receiver scores, being so volatile week to week, just having a ton of wide receivers, you're getting starting receivers late. You also have a chance at a lot of breakout receivers late. I mean, you just did a dynasty podcast, which was great with Levitan and Silva. You talked about T. Higgins. I mean, he was free last year. Claypool free. I don't know if we'll have the same dynamic this year. I
think we will a little bit.
Class better than me, but there's just so many guys with spike week potential late. I do think, a hybrid 0 RB where you get, maybe a foundational running back early. And then again, that 6 running back build was right there in terms of regular league win rate. Like you always want to be flexible. So I think that's fine. It's just hard, when I'm doing an FFPC draft, I can have, 6, 7 running backs on my bench that are full flyers and hope one of them hits. One of them hits, it's huge. But if you drafted Alexander Madison and Tony Pollard in best ball, you were in trouble. And you also need those guys to hit out of the gate too, is like the other thing. You're not just, Tony Pollard might have been pretty useful in some managed leagues come the end of the year. But if you had him in best ball, you had so many dud weeks that it wasn't quite the case. So it's tough because then how are you constructing your running back allocation between guys that at least get you points so you can survive. But each one of those you take, you lose a little bit of upside. So it's just harder to pull. They're two different games. Managing best ball was one of the biggest. I mean, I know it sounds obvious. It was one of the biggest aha moments for me last offseason.
Yeah, the running back profile conversation is interesting. We've talked a little bit about this, through chat and stuff. Because one thing I've been thinking about is like when you know to start a running back, it makes such a big difference in the FFPC. Like if you think about Jeff Wilson, right? If you're going to select Jeff Wilson this year, the reason that you're taking him is because when we think we should be starting Jeff Wilson, that's when he's going to score a lot of points. He's not going to kind of randomly pop up for a big week, most likely, unless Mostert probably goes down mid-game or whatever, right? It's not like Nyheim Hines would be the opposite end of this, where Nyheim Hines, who knows when he's going to have a good week? Because it's just kind of whenever he happened to catch some balls, whenever he happened to get into the end zone, it's going to feel much, much more random. Gus Edwards is probably another guy who's going to be a little bit random because it's about when he scores touchdowns. But Tony Pollard would be on that Jeff Wilson side where if Zeke goes down, everyone knows they need to start Tony Pollard. So for your high stakes teams, slotting Tony Pollard in for those weeks, it's a no-brainer. You don't need best ball to help you out and slot him into your lineup. And I know you haven't really, I don't think you've done any research on this yet, but it's just kind of an interesting, it kind of goes to what you were saying. If you are going with the one elite running back type of build in best ball, or you've kind of gotten boxed out early and you're going to attempt a zero running back build, I think that's something to think through. If you haven't gotten running backs early and then you're selecting guys like Madison and Pollard, I think you're in pretty rough shape at that point because you're not going to get like weeks kind of mixed in and sprinkled into your lineup from those types of dudes. I think you're better off going for the Hineses, the Gus Edwards. Yeah,
you definitely want to, at the very least, try and balance it out a little bit. And one other thing I want to note, looking at the stacking, and Justin Herzig and his keys to winning best ball free article on Establish the Run. Make sure you check it out. But he made the point, don't stack at all costs. And one of the things I looked at was, even just using kind of like inefficient end ADP, applying it to all the leagues, regardless of when they drafted it, and looking at the value of the stack just by comparing where the player was drafted versus their final ADP. Once you started to give up a round and a half of value or more in total over your stack, which honestly isn't that much. If you reach on one guy around early and another guy around early, you're already there to complete your stack. You were in trouble. Your win rates on those stacks were worse than not stacking. So if you can get it at cost or even give up a round and a half of value in composite, it's still worth it to stack. But you do want to be cognizant of the value you're giving up in a draft. And using ADP isn't maybe the best way to do it because the ADP might not necessarily be efficient, but the fact that we can see it so clearly, even just using that metric, you do want to be cognizant of that. I know people who, I think Davis, I don't want to pick on Davis Maddock, but he had a draft where he took Kelsey and Tyreek Hill and wasn't able to get Mahomes. And he's like, I'm done. I'm toast. And I'm like, no, you're not. You got two guys that they're still correlated. Like you're still investing in KC offense, and you didn't invest a super early pick in a quarterback. Like you're fine. It's okay.
Well, that's one of the things that actually jumped out to me in your article because you talked about how stacking overall really helped out, but sometimes stacking the quarterback one wasn't so great, and you don't necessarily want to take more than two quarterbacks. So what if we get 3 stacks in our team, but only 2 of them involve a quarterback?
Yeah, I think that I haven't looked into that specifically, but intuitively that makes a lot of sense to me. And one of the keys to my article last year on stacking was when the offense rolls, everybody rolls. So this link to the quarterback in some ways is the linchpin just to kind of spring us into making these stacks. But it's not absolutely necessary for the stack, right? Especially, if you have a couple of dynamic rushing quarterbacks, those guys are going to put up the ceiling. You can have stacked pass catchers on pass heavy teams. Pittsburgh was a great example last year. If you miss out on Dak this year, I still think you could stack the Cowboys receivers. Give me CeeDee Lamb, give me Gallup late. I don't know what's going to happen. I want to get your take on Jarwin, Dalton Schultz, but that's absolutely viable in my minds, even though I haven't seen the exact. I said my minds as if it's plural. Oh, Pat, things have gone awry. We're in the off season. But yeah, it makes a ton of sense to me that would work, because you don't want to take that third quarterback if you don't have to. If you've already got kind of a top 6 to 8 quarterback and another top 15 quarterback, you don't want to take a third quarterback just for the sake of stack. Like, you make the stack with the receivers. Don't worry about taking the quarterback as well.
Yeah, I think that's something I haven't done a ton of, but it's something that jumped out to me in your article that, maybe you could kind of get a stack without even involving the quarterback.
And like you look at the way QB scores are distributed, we have been talking about how they've been separated a little bit more if you get the right guys, but it's not like when the Pittsburgh Steelers stat goes off, it's not like Roethlisberger's putting up these insane numbers where, oh my God, you have to have Ben Roethlisberger, right? Like, he's putting up pretty good numbers. He's definitely beating his value, but in terms of raw total, he's not the one who's making or breaking. He's kind of tying together that your pass catchers are doing really well, and then they're sort of making or breaking, and then you're guaranteed like a decent quarterback score, which is good, but it's not like that's not the needle mover necessarily.
But also throw in concentrated offenses, right? If you're betting on an offense being concentrated, if you go the Vikings, Kirk Cousins was actually specifically a guy in Justin's article that he mentioned not drafting. He's not looking for Kirk Cousins. He's looking for someone with more upside. But Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook, Irv Smith, I mean, these are all guys that could have huge years. They're all high upside guys. You could stack the Vikings without Cousins. You could potentially stack the Panthers without whoever their quarterback's going to be.
Yeah, I was just going to say we have both DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson as values relative to ADP. It's a concentrated offense. Robbie Anderson's ADP makes no sense to me. I'd rather have DJ Moore, but yeah, those are great examples where the quarterbacks are boring, but the way the offense is structured, it still makes sense to invest. If the offense hits, quarterback's not making or breaking you, but you've got skill players who are going to be huge bargains.
Yeah. Again, kind of going to the rules here. Like, if you're taking a premium quarterback, single stacking him, then getting another quarterback, stacking him, and then trying to like mega stack a team without even their quarterback, that's a strategy where if you're playing like a 12-man best ball league, you may have gone overboard. But we are, again, talking about these underdog tournaments. So you're now trying to beat, this the big board right now is 5.8K. They get bigger. You're going after big fields. And if you have that premium single stack, if you have that secondary stack, someone else has also got that. So you're setting yourself apart a little bit by going for that other stack without the quarterback maybe. And you're also, by just making sure that you are getting stacking in there, creating more upside, more ceiling for your team to take down a massive field.
Yeah. And along those notes, Sam asked in the chat about, stacking and using these fragile strategies in 12 teams league. That's not necessarily big field tournament. I still think a lot of them are viable. When I do release my article, I'm going to try and hit on this, but the biggest edge to me in the best ball tournament is just getting to the playoffs, which is winning your league, which is kind of what you're trying to do in a cash game. Now, obviously cash game, you've got other payouts too. So you don't have to, it's not win or go home sort of thing, but it's still somewhat top heavy. You still want to try and win, but I'm going to include the top 3 rates. And generally what you see is with a lot of these strategies, like if I'm looking at, I want to bring up the running back. I know I don't have it on screen, but so if I look at the rate of finishing top 3 in your league for running backs allocation, right? basically no difference between owning, 3 through 6 running backs. So these teams that went hyper fragile at running back finished top 3 in their league at the same rate as the teams that played normal and took 5 or 6, but then had more upside, additionally. So you actually aren't sacrificing your floor a ton. You're sacrificing maybe your 5th, 6th place floor, but that means literally nothing. Yeah.
Alex was asking about elite players from the same offense if that offense isn't elite. So, Thielen and Jefferson, which we kind of just touched on. But I would say, I think the reason that does work is that, and one of the reasons that you can actually do quarterback running back, who might be negatively correlated on a given week, is because, as Mike said, the primary focus is to make the playoffs in the first place. And so if you get Thielen and Jefferson and the Vikings offense rolls, and both those guys have great seasons, the fact that maybe they didn't blow up on the exact same weeks isn't bad. Maybe it's good. It helps get you to the playoffs.
And maybe in managed leagues, it hurts you a little bit because you got to play both of them. And maybe you're sacrificing the ceiling at the end of the year in the playoffs where, maybe only one of them can go off. But yeah, throughout the year, there's, again, in the super concentrated offenses, there's some floor there, right? If 50% of the targets are going to 2 guys, and we know it's not going to be 25-25 every single week, the guy who's got 30% of targets, like, he's going to have a usable score almost no matter what, right? So you give yourself a little bit of floor because you've got a usable wide receiver week almost, even if you're fluctuating between the two, you're always having a usable wide receiver week locked in.
The last thing to talk about is tight end. You kind of pointed out that tight end didn't really show up as a priority. Tight end is as weird, like Kelsey's going to skew the data. Kittle getting hurt is going to skew the data. Some of the top tight ends right now, I think, kind of happen to be with either a quarterback that's tough to stack with, like Mahomes, or, even if Kittle had stayed healthy, I don't know that we would have wanted to stack him. We had injuries there, so that wouldn't have worked out anyway. Carr is not necessarily someone you're dying to get. So there's some weird stuff going on with tight end, but I think that's maybe the point, is that tight end is a unique position where there really aren't that many tight ends that you want to own. And so what I took away from your research is that the priority of tight end is making sure you have a decent tight end.
Yeah.
And hopefully only spending 2 roster spots on the position and not primarily focusing on stacking. But hey, if you can make a stack work at that position, it's probably good, even if the data didn't love it in 2020.
Yeah, data didn't love it, but the top 7 scoring tight ends by underdog scoring, they were only stacked like 20% of the time. And these were the most important tight ends to win rates, whereas all the other tight ends were stacked 50% of the time. So there was a little bit of bias in the data where these tight ends just happened to not be stacked and they had the highest win rates. So it looks like non-stacks are better than stacks. But yeah, ultimately, I think tight end is you want someone that's going to carry you through the season, and at that point, the correlation matters a little bit less because you're just hoping you get one of these top half, top 1 through 6 tight end, and you're using that score almost weekly, regardless of what the offense does. I still think your tight ends at the back end of the draft make a lot of sense to correlate. They're such crapshoots that you might as well correlate with your quarterback. It didn't come to fruition last year that much, but in previous years it has. I know when I wrote the stacking article last year, that was one of the biggest things was, when a quarterback goes off, his kind of crappy tight end, he usually drags along a little bit.
Yeah, and to that point, you also do need to win in the playoffs. So if you're, at the end of the draft and you're kind of thinking, where do I throw a dart here? Getting a correlated tight end could help you once you do make the playoffs, take down the whole thing. If your quarterback goes off and drags the tight end along. Justin also mentioned in his article talking about, getting guys that maybe aren't going to be as owned overall in the tournament is another way to try to take down.
You grabbed some Claypool last year, like just solely because it was on pit stacks?
Yeah, I grabbed Claypool. I grabbed Van Jefferson, which didn't work out very well. But I do think, yeah, you grab those guys later, and sometimes they weren't even being selected in every draft.
That's the edge, right? In being unique. People talk about being unique early in the draft. It's almost impossible. And I think that was Justin's point, was like, if you're trying to be unique early in the draft, essentially you're just drafting a worse version of a team somebody else already has. But late in the draft, taking T. Higgins, Claypool, guys that might not get drafted, or I think he even used Mike Davis as an example.
He used Mike Davis and James Robinson.
Yeah, and there are all these popular handcuffs, and it's like, these guys are worse bets, but if they hit and they're only on 10% of rosters, like, holy hell, like, yeah, that's a huge edge. And it's just hard to replicate uniqueness outside of the last few rounds of a best ball draft.
Well, I think that's one reason that you should be considering rookies, especially in these early drafts where people aren't going to be as comfortable selecting them. And like, I'm still not all the way through my rookie research. So I feel like if you're up to speed on the rookie class, that's definitely going to be an edge in terms of getting unique. And then these rookie quarterbacks, I also just want to get your thoughts real quick on, if you're taking rookie quarterbacks, we don't know which teams they're going to land on. I mean, Lawrence, we pretty confident he'll be on the Jaguars, but after that, we don't really know. And we're not going to be able to stack them. So does that make them like less interesting to you at all right now?
I don't think so. Yeah, I think I've done, 3 drafts so far, so not a ton, but trying to get into it. We have the ranks up on ETR. I like to draft to make sure I'm in line with those. And Justin Fields is a guy I keep getting because he's in a range where some of these quarterbacks are going real early right now because there's some uncertainty. So our pool of quarterbacks right now is not as large. Usually we have 32 quarterbacks to pick from. We've got, if we want confident the guy's playing, what are we at? Like 26? It's not that high. So the quarterback ADPs are getting pushed up. So if you want 2 of the top 12, which I know is a strategy Justin likes a lot, you might not be able to do it at a good cost. So then I'm looking at, there's Justin Fields versus Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr. Give me the rush upside, and I'll seed my stack equity. And then that's where your strategy comes in, Pat, right? Stack those offenses without the quarterback late. You get Justin Fields, stack the Panthers. I mean, the Panthers would be an earlier stack, but you can stack another offense and get your correlation that way.
Yeah. All right. So I'm about to enter this tournament here. We're entering the big board.
Can you, as you're entering, we're talking about rookies, the running back that seems like he's gotten a lot of hype lately, when I first did the rankings, wasn't up there as much as Javonte Williams, ATN and Najee Harris.
Here.
Oh, wow. That was fast. Whew. Okay. So do you have Javonte with ATN and Najee Harris, or still behind? Because it sounds like there's a chance he's the first running back drafted. I don't know
I think if he's the first running back drafted, then he needs to be taken pretty seriously. I'm a little bit concerned about what his top end speed is, but he's in a committee. People don't love that. I don't really mind that so much. I think if a guy's in a committee and he's not drafted early, then I care. If he's in a committee and was drafted very early, then that doesn't really bother me because it hasn't really tended to matter as much. He's got size. He's really young. He looks pretty good to me. So I think the draft position is going to be pretty key. But right now, I kind of already have him basically in that tier. He's like my running back 3 behind those 2 guys. But ETN I like a lot, but I worry a little bit about how he's going to be deployed because he's definitely like a boom bust type of runner. So if he ends up with just, a dumb coaching staff, they're going to get pissed off he's not keeping him on schedule or whatever.
So I think we have to go running back early.
So these are the ETR ranks here.
Do you have a preference here? I kind of like Saquon. I'm a little bit worried about Kamara with the quarterback switch, but I'm really kind of neutral. But I definitely think we go running back. I'm
good going running back. Yeah. I kind of lean Kamara, but
I'm fine with Kamara.
Just because
I don't have a hot take on these guys.
Okay.
It looks like it's going to be Jameis, which I think is much better for Kamara than Taysom.
Me too.
But there is still a concern that they do just a ton of bullshit with Taysom on the goal line. But they were doing that with Breeze, so but yeah, and we talk about the quarterback pool shrinking. Running back gets difficult. If you don't get running backs early, you get in a weird spot where the mid-tier running backs are so dangerous, right? The James Robinson, the Chris Carsons of the world, right? Like these are guys.
I don't think he'll be back. I can't stomach it.
Exactly, right? Like Melvin Gordon, David John, like these, like it's. I'm just saying, like
on the clock here. He got in.
It gets tough.
Yeah.
So I do think even early, I almost think the hyper fragile's like almost even better now. But it kind of depends how.
No, I think you're right. I think this is the time of year where we know the least about running back situations. Situations are what drives running back value. It's all about the workload. And so it would make just intuitive sense that hyperfragile will be even more powerful now when people are going to have a much harder time doing a spray and pray approach at running back late in the draft with the zero running back type of builds.
Mm-hmm. You would not mind an elite tight end.
Yeah, you can see where my head's at.
I see it, and dude, I mean, it's hard sometimes to not run it back with the same players. But Pat, have you look at that 57 ADP on Mark Andrews?
I'm putting him in the queue as a bit, but yeah, no, I agree, man. I'm going back to well one, I think.
If you want to do a 2 tight end build without deploying top 4 round capital, like Mark Andrews round 5, right? But
we lost Andrews. So what are you thinking here? Should we go?
This is where it gets hard.
Gibson just went. I was literally just about to suggest Gibson.
Like I like Mixon. I'm a lot higher on him than ADP. I just don't see the competition for him, and the offense should be pretty good or like better.
I'd rather go Sanders than Mixon.
Okay, that's fine.
Do you want to do?
I don't want to go Josh Jacobs.
Would you do a wide receiver here, or you think that's?
I think you can do a wide receiver here. We talked about like that kind of nebulous, hyper fragile. I think maybe
just in case. Oh god. Okay, we got auto drafted. This is going faster than it feels like it is. All right, we have Calvin Ridley.
Okay, love Calvin Ridley. That's who I want.
Okay.
But Ridley's fine. I think we talked about this. You don't have to go RB out of the gate, right? We can get 2, and then we still, we get a little bit of an elite receiver ceiling. I really like the RB tight end RB builds. We couldn't do it because the guys went. But like I love those builds, and then just drafting 9 to 10 receivers literally.
Yeah. Eric's pointing out I'm in light mode. That's a good point, Eric.
Yeah.
I knew something was off here.
You need
it also says 30-second clock, but it feels like everyone else starts at 35 and then mine clock expires earlier.
Okay. So we get Sanders anyways.
Oh, we're up. Okay, we get Sanders anyway.
So
nice.
Where's
the draft button now?
What's happening?
You do get a lot of respect, like when Pete's gone, and this is probably why he went on this vacation. You do get a sense of like, oh yeah, this is harder than it looks.
How did we not auto draft Jalen Reagor and Zach Moss just now?
Hang on, something's going on here, but we got Jalen Reagor and Zach Moss.
I timed out, guys, for those 10 seconds that we were up. Dude, Mixon, I feel like right now, maybe I have him too high, but if you can get him in round 3 with all the running back uncertainty, like if you can get Mixon in round 3, I feel like that's fantastic. Like, what's different about Mixon when he was going at the 1-2 turn last year? Like, am I missing? What am I missing?
Yeah, but I spent an entire offseason railing against that. So it's
Right.
a little hard.
But doesn't it? I feel like he's in a better spot than he was last year, and he's going a full round and a half later.
Yeah, I hear you. It's I don't know. I mean, the offensive line is tough. He's never ever really done it, right? He's never been that elite running back. I feel better about him than Josh Jacobs.
Yeah,
but he's going what? He's going after Josh Jacobs by.
I mean, you're investing in Burrow a little bit. Like, you like Higgins, you like that offense.
I like Higgins, but if you don't need to be ahead to have Higgins, it hurts you a lot more if the team is truly hurt by that offensive line. I think that's going to hurt Mixon more than Higgins. But
you start to see why you want 2 running backs in those first 3 rounds. Because our top of the board is, I moved Dylan up today on, with Aaron Jones kind of officially a free agent.
Right. Although it's possible he's back.
Yeah. Levitan thinks he's gone, but yeah, it is possible. But you just see where, and then AJ Dillon, like, I know he's got a lot of upside in terms of rushing efficiency, but people, I don't think, realize just how good of a pass catcher Aaron Jones was, and that really added to his value. And he wasn't a fantasy god because of volume.
I think we grab one more running back here, and then maybe we can get Andrews after that. But
these receivers are tasty right now.
Yeah, the receivers are pretty tasty.
This is the receiver. I know Herzig's in on Galladay quite a bit. We've got some upside on wherever he lands. It's probably not good. He's not going to be with Detroit, most likely.
We got my boy T.
Your boy T is there. God, I really thought I was going to be ahead on CeeDee Lamb, and the market is just not.
They're not letting
CeeDee Lamb at all.
They're not. We could go Julio.
Yeah, and set up the stack. I think I'd look at Julio if Galladay and I don't know. Thielen's tough. I feel like I've got Galladay and T as like I would want those before the correlation would. But running backs really is.
We could go Javonte. We just talked about him. I think he'll end up being a lead back somewhere. Yeah.
So what's at receiver?
At receiver, we've got. I'm just gonna. Every time I put someone on my queue, they get selected immediately.
Yeah, I mean, so I think it's either do we want to go Galladay or T, or just say we're make up with receiver with quantity and go like Javonte and.
Let's go Javonte and someone late, and then just hammer receiver.
Okay, let's queue up Andrews then. Is he still there?
Yeah, Andrews is still there.
You're gonna have so much Mark Andrews.
I'm gonna have so much Mark Andrews, dude.
Is it possible for you to have more Mark Andrews than you did last year?
Yes, he's going later in drafts. It's easy.
And it's a super meaningful later too. Like a round 5 versus round 2 or 3 is a huge difference.
Now, do you like drafting off of the established your own rankings? I find it helpful, and also I kind of lose sense as the draft moves on of like where the ADP actually is.
I remember you saying that, and I asked you to upload the ETR rankings.
These are the ETR rankings.
Draft. Yeah, I like the ETR rankings because I kind of feel like the ADP is right there, and I could kind of make some mental. And I do want to note too, the ADP, especially early. We want Andrews, right?
Do we want Andrews, not Galladay? Okay. I think structurally we should
go Andrews, and we'll just pound receiver. It is tough to take him over Galladay. That's a tough one, man. Galladay in round 5 is kind of silly. But
I've got 2 Kenny Galladays in the queue.
We're gonna get one of them.
I don't know how that happened.
Well, someone just got both of them, so
Damn it.
but we have the ADP baked into the rankings on the different sites. And I think that's helpful because one, kind of knowing that helps you know that it's already balancing ADP in a little bit. So you can make better decisions. Like if we've got a guy ranked earlier than ADP, like maybe you really should take him there because the ADP is dragging down him in our rankings and vice versa. And I also think it helps, like the QB market in FFPC is insane. And with underdog, it's actually pretty normal right now. But having that QB baked in helps you like not get totally caught with your pants down at a position because you have to be somewhat, even if the market's inefficient, you have to like you can't just say, well, they're drafting QBs too early and end up with no QBs.
Well, to that point,
yeah,
we just talked about single stacks with your premium quarterback. Lamar Jackson just went. God damn it.
Oh man, dude, Lamar. See, underdog, like these prices on these QBs are fine. You know, the 5-6 turn is fine for where Lamar, Kyler, and Dak just all went in a row. In FFPC, they're going so. What is there at QB now? It's kind of.
I have QB and wide receiver selected here. Deshaun, Russ. Not a lot. There's not a lot.
Yeah, Herbert.
I guess Herbert goes a little later here. Well, Hurts is actually pretty interesting for us with Sanders. He feels like a classic swing for the fences pick, right? The team's dead if they draft a quarterback, obviously, but
I thought there was a report they weren't going to, but that could just be bullshit, right?
Yeah,
like, they're not. I mean,
so what do we like here? Do you want to go with your boy Robbie?
I do like Robbie.
We could go Marquise and do the stack without the quarterback.
Yeah, I don't like the stack without the quarterback with Lamar.
I agree.
I wish we could do Cooks Watson, but Watson might be gone, right? Like it's really hard to stack this early in the year. I kind of like just going.
Let's do Cooks Watson and okay. They're going to work it out. They're going to work it out.
What if you had to handicap that? What would you put it at?
50-50.
I mean, 50-50 is definitely. I mean, Cooks was our second highest wide receiver, and Watson's our highest quarterback. So that's, and again, we're stacking at like again, we're not reaching for this. So if it doesn't work out, we're fine. But I have noticed it's really hard to stack early in the year with this QB uncertainty.
Right.
And I mean, there's still a lot of free agents and stuff. And you know, like Juju is an early round receiver. I mean, Galladay we talked about. We don't know where he's going to go.
Well, Watson just went.
Bastard.
Getting sniped on our stacks, dude.
Okay. Can I swear on our street? Yeah, I can swear.
Yeah, swear away.
Okay.
I put the explicit content tag on every single episode of Establish the Edge, even though we rarely swear. just
in case.
Yeah.
God, I feel so mad here. I feel like Robbie is. Am I overthinking Robbie?
No, I don't think so.
I mean, I know you really like Jamar Chase.
I do really like Jamar Chase.
And there's a chance this is, you know, I'd go with Robbie or Chase. I'm fine with either. There's even a chance Robbie lasts.
I think we go Robbie. Let's see, ADP. Do you want to play? I don't know.
Do we take an unstacked Russ? Where does Lockett go? Did he already go?
I think he's gone.
He's gone. Yeah, he's still going early. What's that QB?
Do you want to take an unstacked Russ? I just hate what Seattle's doing. Pisses me off.
We also don't know where Russ is going to end up.
All right, we have Anderson.
Okay. What's that QB? Because we are at a point where
we gotta get Hurts.
Yeah, we're preying on Hurts. There's also Burrow Boyd. Like Boyd is there later. Do they have? Is there anyone to speculate on wide receiver 3 for them?
God, I mean, the problem is there's like
probably not, right?
Yeah.
there's also Visca
Lawrence. That's what we do.
I probably need to adjust to Lawrence. I'm probably a little too low on Lawrence. I'm a little worried that he's just walking into a bad spot, but
I think it might be a good spot with Shark and Visca. I think Bevel's not a moron. I mean, I don't think he's great, but it's fine.
Yeah. I'm probably bump him up a little bit. I'm definitely low on him relative to ADP.
Gruden played so slow. He was slow in Washington. He was slow last year. So I think even just like not being super, super slow paced will help Trevor Lawrence fantasy wise.
Eric, you can't take any players we've mentioned. Those are the bylaws.
Yeah, dude. Come on. This isn't
it is
come on. I think Chenault just got auto drafted. Is that what that little badge means?
So we did Rojo. We did a podcast talking about quarterback and speculating about what happens if the ADPs get shifted. And that was more around redraft. And I think redraft, it's going to be pretty manageable. But we are seeing in best ball, you do get squeezed a little bit. If it is a meaningful edge to have, a higher upside quarterback, dude, though, who's really easily stackable?
Who?
Wentz. I'm not here.
That's disgusting.
Not here, but you can get Wentz, Pittman, Paris Campbell for like nothing.
All right,
nothing, Pat.
Put him in.
I'm not taking him.
No, not here. I know.
But right, I mean that's. Pittman's ADP is actually. I'm a little lower of market than him, so that's probably why. God, Jarvis Landry and Gallup.
Hertzwank. God damn it.
Yeah.
All right. We don't have a plan here right now.
No. Can you? Yeah. Let me look at just core. Oh, you know who I want to take? An unstacked Tom Brady.
Oh God, come on.
No, we won't do it. We won't do it.
I mean, we could go Antonio Brown, Tom Brady, and then I'll sign off.
What do you think the Burrow upside is?
I think it's okay. I would feel a lot better about it if we had Higgins.
My buddy Dan, who lives next door, just texted me and made a really good point. But the Bills' offense went nuts last year, and you can do Beasley, Gabe Davis stacks at like super easy cost. All right. Wait. Go. Why don't we just get a good receiver like Gallup or something?
Okay.
Or or should we just grab? I mean,
do you want to just grab Brady? We can get Antonio Brown. We got Brady.
Okay.
We'll literally get the Antonio Brown. This is a disgusting draft. I know how Ben feels now.
You drafted Brady. I was kidding about the unstacked Brady. I do love Brady, but you got to get that QB1 with rushing upside, and I think we managed to.
We did it, man. We practice what we preach. It all goes to hell. I kind of knew it all go to hell. I haven't done this is my first underdog. I've done some FFPC.
It takes practice, and with all the uncertainty, drafts are hard right now, and I think I'm going to have less stacked drafts early, which maybe makes is a mistake because you think, there's more uncertainty, so you'd want the correlation more, but I freaking love Higbee.
All right. I love Higbee too.
Do some like Stafford, Jefferson, Higbee.
Ooh, that sounds great. Do we start that now?
We're on the clock.
Do we get the Antonio Brown and get
the Antonio Brown? Let's take the Antonio Brown.
Right. At least anytime you can stack Brady and Antonio Brown, you got to do it. God damn it. All right.
But you see where you can start to see why I draft Fields a lot, right? Like,
yeah, I want Fields right now.
Is Stafford gone?
Stafford, I think, might be gone.
Oh wow, he's gone.
Good Lord.
So much for that idea.
So what is Fields' most likely landing spot? Is it the Jets?
Let me look at
Do you want to swing for the fences and go like Fields, Mims?
God, I do like Mims.
Fields, Mims, I can't take Herndon.
Do we? Yeah, this is where you're. Oh God, the latest ESPN mock draft has him to the 49ers in a trade with Detroit.
That'd be cool.
Oh, Kuiper, you're out of control.
That'd be really cool.
Dude, Fields with the Niners would be sick. I don't know if we have to try and stack Fields. I mean, Crowder's near the top of our list if we do decide to do it. Man, I love the Beasley Gabe Davis stack ideas in my head now, though.
I love that. Stack. Yeah, I love that. Do these ranks account for the John Brown news?
Oh, yes.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so we're
quick.
We're pretty far ahead of ADP on Gabe Davis right now.
Yeah. I got to feel smart on the Dynasty pod. I was like, I think John Brown's getting cut.
Yeah, good. That's a great call. And I tweeted a few days ago. I was like, I think they're both values. You know, Brown's really good. People,
he'll land somewhere.
Gonna be. The issue is he saw more volume in Buffalo than he might see somewhere else. But like he's gonna have his spike weeks no matter where he goes.
Yeah. We can still do Goff, Amendola, and Cephas. You into that?
If we're doing that, we're taking the Gazelle. Okay.
Yeah, that's true. God, I do not want Detroit. I was so excited about DeAndre Swift this year.
Oh, dude.
I was so excited.
I know. It's disappointing. I was half kidding about the Gazelle, but I think because he didn't do anything last year, like he's someone you could get in round 18 who's like might be their number one receiver.
I'm just glad they let Kenny Golladay walk. There goes Cole Beasley. There goes Tyler Higbee. God damn it. You get sniped a lot when you live stream, and I don't know if there's any correlation there, but
I like to be able to blame the correlation. What's your take on Bateman?
Bateman's a stud. Bateman's an absolute stud.
So he's available.
Bateman shouldn't be here.
Okay.
Let's just take Bateman.
Okay. As you say that, I'm like moving up Bateman in our ranks because that's where we had him. So
yeah, he's like an all-around classic outside wide receiver. He played some in the slot, but he's an outside wide receiver in the pros. He's got NFL size, hyper productive. Awesome right away.
So can you go to quarterback only? I think we. Oh my God! Why aren't we taking Matt Ryan?
Because we're dumb.
right. I mean, with Ridley,
no, we should. There shouldn't have even been a discussion. We should have had him like 3 rounds ago.
One thing I noticed too. But Baker's sticking around, and I don't see Baker's one of those guys where it's like, because you can get Landry, like you could get Odell, Landry, Baker really easy. All right, so we take Ryan, right? Like, and Hurst is still, because he had such a down year, like he could be our TE.
All right, and then we got to get, so we're done at quarterback, right? Even though we don't have any rushing upside?
Yeah, I think we're done at quarterback.
Or do you want to try to get an unstacked Fields?
I mean, I think we're done at quarterback.
Okay.
I mean,
Fields in there just for fun.
If I had to do it over again, I think we'd maybe like not take Brady, but also if we had to do it over again, we probably would have taken Ryan earlier.
Howard.
Oh, OJ Howard. Yeah, that's.
I'm thinking through some late options. Scotty Miller.
And this is where we mentioned, stacking tight end isn't as important. And I think that's with the number one tight end. But when you're in the kind of crapshoot T2, I think it makes sense to get
Gronk's going to be back?
Yeah.
All right. So we've got some options here. Now, running back, we only have 3
tight end options.
Oh, yeah, we do need tight end.
Oh, Jamal Williams. I don't know. So what's your take on Jamal? I was like he crushed in DFS when Aaron Jones was out, like absolutely smashed. Now it won't be the same this year because Dylan's definitely going to get work over him, but Jamal could have a decent pass catching role. Like I do not see.
Did he get re-signed? or they
I
because he's a free agent too.
Yeah, I guess I was assuming he was back, but that's what's hard doing these projections ahead of time is you're like, he is still a UFA. So that yeah, that my ranking's probably a little hot. I have him still on Green Bay.
Yeah, I mean, this Michael Carter kid's interesting.
I've heard he's a good pass catcher, correct?
Yeah, he's like a Gio Bernard type. But Gio Bernard hopefully is a rookie and not as he is right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Carter's interesting.
Because if we get one more running back, then we're done.
I could see going Carter Hurst at this turn.
Okay.
And I do think we have I think we do only want to go 4 running backs. Let's stick to our strategy.
Yeah, I like that.
Getting Ridley early, like I do think we have a little wiggle room if we wanted to go an extra RB or an extra QB or an extra tight end. We don't want to go an extra tight end because we took Andrews. So
no, we don't.
We have like some wiggle room to take Fields. You know what I mean? Like we don't.
That's what I was gonna say. If we get we don't know where Fields is gonna go. We don't have to force the stack, but I mean, you get a little bit of rushing upside with Fields in a Josh Allen type of way. I think.
I'm good with Fields. The more I think through it, because we're basically set at running back and tight end, and we're going to pound a ton of receivers regardless. So I could see going like Fields Carter here.
All right, let's go Fields.
And then I guess it's like Carter or Hurst. Your boy Zach Moss is there too.
That's true.
Hurst kind of seems, but also it's weird. Like I think it's good value for Hurst, but it does seem like there's a drop off at running back, and Hurst goes. So
Hurst goes. Okay.
Yeah. So I think it's clearly your favorite running back and getting done with it.
I think it's Carter. Carter's pretty nice value here.
We're getting pretty good value on the rookies.
I think, people are going to feel pretty comfortable selecting Etienne and Najee and to some extent Williams, but they're not going to feel good about selecting any of these other running backs. Because running back is so situational. But I think Michael Carter is going to be drafted on day 2. So that alone, he's going to have a role.
And there's a really high probability we're going to get a Tampa Bay tight end.
Yes, that's true.
So how do you see the OJ Howard Gronk thing shaking out? Gronk looked better towards the end of the season. Obviously, the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But at the same time, a few weeks before the Super Bowl, we were like, oh, Cameron Brate's crushing Gronk on a third of the snaps. So.
Right. But I mean, I could see OJ Howard playing the Gronk role there and Gronk being more of the Cameron Brate, in that sense of being more the receiving option. He's got the connection with Brady. OJ Howard, we saw 2 years ago, we were expecting a breakout season. He's blocking a ton. So I'm not actually that excited about OJ Howard, but if he's free, that's not bad. Yeah. Gronk just went. So
the Cleveland thing too, I mentioned, but like Austin Hooper is still here. Like Cleveland looks like a very easy stack. What about Ebron?
Ebron, yeah.
Like that's a nice, I know it's not correlated, but that's a pretty nice upside selection.
If we just look at tight end.
Komet and Jarwin. I mean, we still have some decent bodies. The corpse of Zach Ertz. Oh, that I did want to get your. Did you have a take on Jarwin just goes, but Jarwin, Dalton Schultz? Like Dalton Schultz played much better than I expected, but I was huge on Jarwin going into last year. Do you have any? I mean, I know it's so early, but any idea how that's going to shake out?
Not really. My general thinking on it is that we never actually knew if Jarwin was good, and Schultz looked pretty good, and so I lean Schultz. Just because it's like always such a mystery with these tight ends that they're even good at receiving.
Yeah.
So I'll just kind of take what I saw from Schultz, and I don't have to project with him as much. I'd rather have Schultz, but could be totally wrong. Komet was a really good prospect. Didn't do that much last year, really. I mean, he wasn't very efficient. But, God, is this all who's left? I think we grab Komet.
Yeah, I mean,
Komet has a potential to be featured.
Right. And we don't know what's going to happen at quarterback there still. Like there's still some high upside options. I'm good with Komet, and we're done.
Yeah. All right, I like
Komet,
that.
We're done. Sorry, OJ Howard. And now
we're done so just receivers.
So if we could get Gage to get the double stack with the guy who's highest on our board,
that'd be sick.
You'd be very happy. And
Gage is going to be playing in Atlanta this year. You know, there's no doubt about what his situation is. It's just, it's nice and easy.
Man, this turn felt like it went so fast at other times. And now that I'm sweating Gage, Russell Gage, it's going slow.
Yeah, man. Time slows down when you're sweating Russell Gage.
And we're just receivers from here on out, right? I mean, that's kind of the fun of these sorts of builds.
I know. I think that is fun about best ball. It forces you to make selections you wouldn't normally make because you want to follow the structure or you want to follow a stack. But then when you select a guy that you didn't really plan on selecting, you end up thinking through that player more than you might otherwise. You know, it's easy to kind of be like, I'm not taking that guy, and you never think about it again.
Yeah, you definitely have to take some guy. I mean, like when you're going zero running back in managed leagues, you know, some of these receivers, you're like, they haven't crossed your radar at all. You just,
exactly.
Man,
exactly.
I can't believe we ended up with a double wide receiver stack out of that at super good ADP cost.
I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, we took Ridley a little earlier than ADP, but not by much. His ADP is 23. We took him at the end of 2. We got Ryan late. I mean, so getting these doubles without paying for it. I mean, some of it was fortuitous. We actually sort of blew it on Ryan, like not even thinking about him for as long as we did. But
no, I knew he was there. I just wanted to make sure we got a good value on him. No, I'm kidding. I had no idea he was there.
And we can definitely get Scotty Miller as, you know, a stacked, just kind of dart throw.
Here's my bone to pick with the ETR rankings. Jacoby Myers had a 2.24 yards per route run last year. Jacoby Myers can play wide receiver at the NFL level. I know he's like not the best wide receiver ever, and I know we're not generally targeting Patriots guys, but like he's going to have a role, and I think he's probably going to be the best wide receiver on their team because they can't get wide receiver figured out.
Yeah, I mean, I want you to pick bones with the ETR rankings because it's March, Pat, and it was hard to put together all these rankings this early. So
I would say kudos to you that my biggest bone to pick with the entire rankings is Jacoby freaking Myers. But that is the one that stood out the most to me because as I'm going through my dynasty ranks, I'll kind of like cross-check with what you guys have on the redraft stuff. And I'm like, okay, I've got Julio Jones like 9 spots lower than what you have in redraft. Like that sort of intuitively makes sense to me. Or, if I don't want to be like 30 spots lower on a guy than you have in redraft, even if he's old. But Jacoby Myers, I was like, I'm insanely high on Jacoby Myers compared to you guys. But he's going into his 3rd year and he just had a really, really strong second-year season. And I don't think his role is going to change that much.
Yeah, no, that's what's good. And sometimes you need that perspective. I'm doing these more volume based, and I'm like, well, if Edelman's back, Demir Birdsall targets, N'Keal Harry sucks, but he's still there. And like sometimes it gets hard to flush that out. And when it's this early, you need to ignore that a little bit. So our ranks do have like sort of this base volume, but plus an upside component that lets me kind of play around with that a little bit. And also, they were just so. My team stats for them might be bad because they were so run heavy with Cam and so inefficient passing, and they still have the quarterback concerns that these things might be dragging him down. But there was a stretch where Jacoby Myers was at like a 35% target share for like 3 or 4 weeks, which just does not happen that often.
Right. Yeah, he was soaking up volume. He just got selected. Do you want to grab Scotty Miller or Tyler Johnson? Do you have a feel for those dudes?
I want to grab John Brown.
Okay.
We talked like, I mean, I know he's not on a team, but this seems insane to me. I could go Brown, and then I have my preference is for Scotty Miller over Tyler, but maybe have too much buy. I like Brown here first, but I don't know. Do you have a preference here? My thought with Scotty Miller is he made like a few big plays, and that could be pretty usable as a backup wide receiver, even if the volume's not there.
If we didn't have Antonio Brown, I would definitely feel like it's Scotty Miller because they were basically kind of splitting a role, and I thought Miller was actually better in that role than Brown. But I don't know. I think Tyler Johnson, I just kind of have a soft spot for him because I think he's a good wide receiver and he hasn't really gotten a chance. But I think it probably is Miller if you can pick. And if you have your pick.
I mean, we could get both. There's nothing wrong with going both to finish the draft.
That's true. We know Brady's going to roll again. God damn it. I hate Tom Brady, and now I've selected him. And I'm now going to triple stack his ass.
Our amazing FFPC playoff challenge distribution, except we didn't have enough Tom Brady.
Yeah, I know. You can't exactly – for all the analytics and numbers and stuff we look at, you think we'd maybe be a little bit more robotic, but we do all these FFPC challenges and we don't have any Brady or Fournette. Yeah. Pretty predictable. All right, let's grab Miller and then see if we can get Tyler Johnson on the way back.
So I went from making all these excuses as to why we didn't stack to us actually doing my optimal stacking, which is 2 quarterbacks with 2 receivers.
Yeah, and then we did kind of a weird this time of year throw in a third quarterback. We don't know where he's going to go, but I like that we really stacked up the quarterbacks who aren't going to rush for us, and we still got a little bit of bonus rushing upside.
I like it. It came together.
It came together.
It got a little hairy there. There were definitely a couple picks where I was just like, I don't know.
There was a few rounds where I didn't know what was going on.
No. The Calvin Ridley selection ended up tying. He's the rug that ties the room together.
He is the rug that ties the room together. Brandon was asking me about my Terrace Marshall thoughts. I like Terrace Marshall. I would think of him. This is like tough because we literally just had the upside scenario hit here, but kind of thinking of him as like the T. Higgins of this class, in that he didn't have the production that I want, and that's definitely a red flag. But he, was good in college. It's just that he wasn't dominating. When I say production, I mean a big slice of his team's offense. He didn't have that, but premier program, high-end prospect. The draft position will be there, and he came out early. And if the draft position's there when he's declaring early, the NFL clearly sees him as a big-time prospect. I think that's enough to make me consider him as someone who has a really high ceiling. Other guys in this mold, though, are like Laquan Treadwell and some of the biggest busts that we've seen. So just keep in mind with him that he's going to have a really wide range of outcomes. This is exactly how I viewed T. Higgins last year. I would take him if he fell to me, but he wasn't really a big target for me in Dynasty. I think that Marshall, given the nature of this class, might be a little bit more of a target, but I think pretty similar in terms of like the range of outcomes as a prospect to T. Higgins.
Nice. Yeah, and kudos to Pat, who really helped me get the rookies in the redraft rankings in like reasonable spots.
Yeah, it's kind of fun to talk through that stuff with you. And I still need to the crazy thing about this class, I mean, it's tough because we're not going to have the combine. So right now, like I feel like I'd be further ahead on my running back research. And so that's the part where over the next week or so, I'm going to be diving in on the running backs a lot, and I'll have rookie ranks up. I'm thinking next week at Established Run and get those running backs once I get all the running backs figured out.
I think we go Tyler. I mean, there's no reason not to. I was joking on Twitter. Sammy Watkins, I think, is a steal every year, and I took him in the 18th round of my other draft I just completed today.
All right, well, you have your Sammy Watkins exposure. We'll grab Tyler Johnson here.
Your note on the combine stuff, though, definitely check out the podcast that Pat did with Levitan and Silva, the Dynasty podcast. You guys went through that. You mentioned how draft capital you think is really important because there's so much uncertainty, and that's kind of like, I mean, it's not a known commodity now, but that's going to be important and maybe more important than in previous years, given the uncertainty of the other stuff. So being able to pin that down, I think we've seen, I thought I saw some research, but I'm talking out my ass a little bit, but around aggregate mock drafts being like actually somewhat decent. Predicted.
Yeah.
But
well, I mean, that's what I said on the pod. Like, I really think that, following Evan's mock drafts and stuff and trying to get a sense of where these guys are actually going to go is going to be pretty huge in figuring out like where to be taking them in dynasty drafts and stuff. Because we just don't know as much about these prospects as we normally would. Like I was talking about Rondale Moore with the FTN guys, and God, we had 13 games from him as a rookie and 7 games since. And partly that's due to injuries, but it's like the shortened season and stuff puts a lot of guys in this situation where we don't have as much from their final season as we normally would. And that final season is so critical in the prospect evaluation. So
yeah,
I think being humble about like the fact that we're just not going to know as much about these prospects as we normally would. And that draft position is already such a huge component, but it's gonna have to weigh a little bit more this year.
So speaking of where guys might go in draft, we took Fields. I feel pretty good about. Should I have Zach Wilson higher as well? I've seen some mock drafts where he's been going higher than Fields. He's been going as the QB2. Thoughts on Zach Wilson? His value relative to Fields.
I kind of prefer Fields, but I think my general thoughts on quarterback is that like if you just ignored everything but draft position and targeted guys who had like a high upside profile, that's my way of having Josh Rosen not ruin this point. If you just were like, this dude was drafted highly, I'm in, then it was a smash. And that includes guys who were busts. Like that includes Blake Bortles. If you're just like Blake Bortles, like, and I guess this is more of a dynasty point because Blake Bortles had a pretty rough rookie year, but he was pretty great as a sophomore. But we just don't know that much about these prospects, and quarterback is the hardest position to evaluate. So if a team is going to put their entire franchise behind a dude for like 3-4 years, I think trust that.
Zach Wilson goes as QB 25. So you're talking about Daniel Jones, Jimmy G, Jared Goff, Tua, Kirk Cousins, like that sort of range where Zach Wilson is going right now.
Yeah, I mean, he looks like, and I think he does have a ceiling.
Is Trey Lance draftable, or is there too much like job risk that he's not drafted?
I think Trey Lance is draftable. Yeah. I think, definitely a swing for the fences pick, but I think he is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we got some guys that are going to run.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, Josh Allen is sort of the hugest upside version of what I was talking about, where you get the guy who no one likes, big arm, going to run around a little bit. But yeah, I think Trey Lance, Mac Jones, I don't have as much interest in. I don't think we're going to get much rushing out of him or anything. So he'd be the one where I probably wouldn't be drafting him right now.
In the same job security risk as Lance, but without the rushing upside, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, Trey Lance, like he's got a ceiling. He's got a ton of size. He's like huge arm, right? I mean, and he's cheap. So what's not to like, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does seem like if you get phased out of the early quarterbacks, you can get an upside rookie quarterback at some point in your draft. And it just depends what price you want to pay. If it's Fields, I mean, we got Fields in what, 12? I mean, we
got Fields so late.
We got Fields late, but then, I mean, you can get Lance for free and Wilson at the very back end of drafts. So you have your outs to get some upside if you whiff early, which we kind of whiffed, and then we got two of the better non-rushing quarterbacks. So it is an interesting construction we have.
What about if we had gone? What if we had taken that Brady thing completely out of the draft? So we don't have Brown, we don't have Brady. We spent our late round wide receiver picks on some other flyers. Well, actually, those flyers being Zach Wilson and Trey Lance. What if we'd gone Atlanta stack? We stack up another team, but we don't get the quarterback. And then at the end, we just take Wilson and Lance, and we're getting quarterback weeks. Our quarterback weeks are fine.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it seems like Zach Wilson's going to be playing based on all the mocks I've seen recently. I think that would have been viable. We basically we'd have a pretty solid upgrade at one of our wide receiver spots had we done that.
Yeah. And you get the – I mean, I guess Antonio Brown isn't a bad pick, but you get the optionality, I guess, to take the best player on the board there.
The hard part about that is we ran a little pure on the Ryan thing. So it's
we sure did.
If you knew you were going to get Matt Ryan, like where you got him, I think what you're saying makes a ton of sense. But that might not have worked out, and we might have actually just drafted Ryan a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
But you could have the same conversation. Like even if we took Ryan where we took Brady, you could have taken a better receiver where we took Ryan and taken and not taking one of those two guys, regardless of which one it was, and then taking the Lance Wilson combo late.
And we could have gotten, what was it, Hurst instead of Fields or something.
Yeah.
So we would have upgraded a tight end, because that's the other thing. You're not taking Fields where we took him. Instead, you're taking Wilson and Lance.
I would have had Hurst there.
Yeah. So that's kind of interesting. I mean, it's like a really weird construction, but if you are trying to figure out ways to get unique, I bet people aren't doing that. So
yeah, and that's where it's hard to know, how much do I value, my confidence in Fields versus the point you kind of just made about upside QBs, that if they're going to be drafted in a spot where teams are investing in them, let's not overthink who we think's necessarily good or more certain. Is Fields that much more valuable than those guys? And I think where we got Fields, it was a good pick, but it's worth discussing.
Yeah, I think I'm going to try to do that. I think because there just shouldn't be that big of a discrepancy in the ADP on these early quarterbacks, because we just don't know. We don't even know where they're going to get drafted. Like Wilson could be the second quarterback in the draft.
Yeah.
Like PFF has him ranked higher than Fields. So who knows? Like maybe he goes second.
Yeah, I think I'm moving both those guys up our board a little bit after this conversation.
Nice. All right. Well, to that point, check out the Best Ball Ranks at Established Run. Do you have an idea when that series is coming out in the next few weeks, month, or
Yeah, I don't. I would expect to see at least the first part of the series over the next couple of weeks or so. I'm
Oh,
not sure exactly how, if we're going to publish it all at once or kind of once a week, with being so early in the off season. But definitely be on the lookout. I think one of our goals this year with bringing Justin Herzig on board is to expand our best ball coverage. I think this
yeah.
format is just going to grow and grow, and we really want to cover it super well. And it's nice that we have some actual data from Underdog to dig in and use. I think that's going to be pretty helpful. So even in addition to that series, me and Justin will have some cool stuff with the roster construction, aside from stacking and like really digging into that. I'll do a follow up on my hyperfragile. There's just so much we can do now that we've got some more data.
Yeah, it's really fun to kind of like crack this format because, as you mentioned, it's like, I don't know, a couple years ago, people are kind of playing this format pretty similarly to how they're playing their high stakes drafts and everything else. Not completely, but it would be like, oh, he's better in best ball, that that trope, but not like completely reformatting your entire draft and paying a ton of attention to positional allocation and that type of thing. So yeah, it's it'll be really excited whenever you get that article out. Eric can't wait for it. You can check out my Dynasty stuff there too. And Pete's going to be back next week. We're going to be, I actually have no idea what we're going to be doing. We'll figure it out. Probably talk about Top Shot again. But you can, you can check us out right here next week. And check out Establish the Edge on iTunes. And we will see you when we see you. And I should have had the outro ready, but I didn't. And it hasn't played.